It's a great technology. It made miracles happen. Apple wouldn't be Apple today without the Smack Stack. But it's also rather centralized, right? It takes us to, I think I got my slides out of order. Anyway, Internet of Things, if you add blockchain, this is a sequence that where it's going to go. And I'll just touch on it briefly. Anything from sending Bitcoin to a family member to here in the middle, seller and lender enter into a smart contract agreement for purchase of a house. They don't need all the guys in the middle. They'll do it just between the two of them. I'm still looking for that day. Into autonomous business units and organizations. And finally, where we create our own societies. That's where the connections and the data transparency and the immutability and trust replacement that blockchain brings, all of these things become possible to envision. And we're at various stages in the development. So, industry is very interested in all this. They're very interested in blockchain. Like I said, I've been in the design-based industries for more than 30 years. In the last 6 months, I've been asked by every one of the magazines I write for as a freelancer, blockchain, blockchain, blockchain. I just turned in one last week on blockchain and construction. They're hungry for it. Industry's hungry for it. Designers are hungry for it. Everybody wants to know more about it. In 2016, the market analysts estimate $2.3 billion was spent in blockchain. That's development, that's research. There's not much to show for it in terms of product yet. And those same analysts will tell you the consensus that I got, I put it at 16.3 billion. Now, if you need some background there, the blockchains that are the biggest ones that people are talking about in manufacturing, in supply chain, are Hyperledger is first. Oracle's into Hyperledger. IBM is into Hyperledger. It's big. But those of us who are activists in this scene don't see it because we're too busy looking at what's the next coin for monetizing watching television. So we don't see this. But they're after the transparency in a closed system. They want everything open to the people who need to know it. So there's that dynamic tension between the freedom of information that a blockchain provides, where everybody can look at the immutable record, the distributed ledger, and the need to say, well, look, not everybody needs to see the ledger of how we create product. And so there's a dynamic tension going on there, which is why they love Hyperledger. It's written for that, and IOTA as well. Asset management, supply chain. A big company you might recognize, Schneider Electric, showed me a demonstration of how they're studying this for supply chain. And they told the story of a guy delivering chocolate. It leaves the factory, expensive chocolate, got to be temperature controlled to the store. But it goes through 3 hands before it gets to the store. How do you guarantee that the chocolate is in perfect condition? Well, you slap a smart tag on it, and it monitors its temperature. It monitors whether it's getting shaken and joggled by the truck driver. It monitors how long it takes to change hands, and when it changed hands, who did it go to next? Something like, olive oil industry has a crisis because somewhere the olives get squeezed and then it disappears, and all of a sudden the bottle that says olive oil on it is half coconut or something. It's a real problem. Supply chain management, and then identity, transaction processing. Business is fascinated by these ideas, and they're running at breakneck speed, so to speak, but they're still very much in the R&D and examination stage. The Oracle guy told me last week, he said, November, we'll show you something in November, something real. So it's like 2018 is like, the end of the year is going to be the debutante ball. They're all going to display themselves and come out of the darkness. It should be, in the next few months, should be really interesting for industry and blockchain. I propose there is a new stack emerging. All the pieces aren't in place yet, but this is going to drive the next wave of technological advance the same way the lamp stack, boom, the internet, the smack stack, boom, the revolution in communicative technologies, smartphone being the poster child. I'm saying ROADI, and maybe you give me advice later. Maybe I should put the I in the front and say it's the I road. That sounds like a device, right? Anyway, it is real-time, operational, autonomous, decentralized intelligence. And this is a bunch of technologies coming together, including some things that are in infancy. 5G. They're talking about 5G, but nobody's got an 5G smartphone yet, but we will soon. I intend to wait until 5G is normalized before I upgrade my current smartphone. But 5G will revolutionize data flow to devices, to other internets. It is the first telephone standard for the wireless age that has almost nothing to do with phone calls. Of all the previous standards, 4G, 3G, Edge, blah, 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 voice was primary. Voice was predominant. 5G voice is an afterthought. It's all about data and transmission. So anyway, edge and fog computing. Clouds, they're too big, they're too centralized, they're too far away. Latency sometimes is a huge issue. Just the fact that you have to transmit back and forth might be too late. You need the processing taking place right at the location to have all of these things come together. Real-time processing, it's got to be now. Dashboards are big in engineering and manufacturing. Dashboards are rarely real-time. Even if they're a minute behind on reporting something, that's old news. We need real-time, and these technologies coming together are going to create a foundation. I believe that the poster children, we'll have more than one for this revolution, is already, the work is being done or it's being delivered. Autonomous drones, autonomous vehicles, because they are in a real-time situation gathering and analyzing and processing massive, massive data. So massive data, right now the big problem in delivering these sorts of things is there's just too much data going on. 5G will take care of that. It will be the huge pipe that autonomous anything need. Real time, operational. This car has to operate in an environment it can't predict. The technology like deep learning and being able to analyze the situation, machine vision. I think it's going to be machine senses, not just machine vision. It's got to be radar, it's got to be LiDAR, but it's got to be able to take in the sounds of the environment as well. A lot of work to be done, and every time you say that, it's like n-degree data, more data. And more decisions to make about who does that data belong to. Let me ask you a question. Can an autonomous vehicle be a witness to a crime? If somebody pushes a person in front of an autonomous car, and the autonomous car witnesses it, but it happened so real it couldn't respond, can it witness at the trial? We have a data problem to solve right there, and a trust problem. Massive amounts of data, and this data requires big visualization. If you need to invest in the future of roadie, I'll tell you a company to invest in, and that's NVIDIA. They are making the computation devices that used to be just for games and engineering graphics, and now they're running the autonomous cars of the future, their technology. Same GPUs, all of a sudden they found out that the parallel processing inside is really fabulous for this real-time work. So, big visualization, big bandwidth, big storage, big processing. Just graphics alone, the demands are just huge, and they're not going to get smaller, they're not going away, they're only getting bigger. So, what does this all mean in terms of the ethical considerations and why we're here? The construction industry, that's a B with billions. $870 billion every year. Remember, it's $1 trillion industry, construction is. But that's $750 billion already that they don't count in that $1 trillion because it's different set of books. Infrastructure, litigation. Architects like to talk about, we call it design, bid, build, but it's really design, bid, build, sue. Because that's what happens. Nobody trusts anybody in the industry. And what can blockchain do? It automates trust. It can solve these problems, and there are companies working on that in this space. How do we enforce, like the first speaker, how do we enforce social judicial regulations? How do we as a people respond to Agora devices knowing and seeing? What are we going to do about those things? Huge issue. IP ownership. One of my clients is a 3D printer company that I provide services for, so it's on my mind that they have the ability, because manufacturing is going that way, where things are being 3D printed. The model data becomes the part, with no intermediary. The factory changes because of it. And you can embed data into that part. You can say, well, So-and-so owns the IP, you are licensed to print that. And if something gets to market because somebody stole the data, the product can tell the truth. I was illegally manufactured. I was illegally printed. And here's two way out there things. Universal basic mobility. We give roads away, so to speak. You didn't have to pay a toll to drive down Avenue Diagonal here, say it in English. It was provided as a service to everyone. Well, what if we rethink that and say universal basic mobility with these autonomous machines? Who owns it? Who gets to use it? Who pays for it? Lots of considerations. And then the whole idea of robots doing valuable things. Some human doesn't do them anymore. How do we solve the issues related to income distribution, income creation? A lot of things to consider about it. All right, that's my peek into the world of manufacturing and different. So,